Good afternoon. I think it's afternoon, yes, just past midday here up in the north. It's another sort of dull day, it's not raining. But yeah, welcome to Back Away from the Donkey. My name's Duncan and this is Baft Books. And this is my pick and mix. Also welcome from Micah the Labrador, who's, hello baby, who's coming to see me. So you might hear some panting and some tail wagging. And Gizmo the little Yorkie, what's he doing? He's asleep over there. So that's fine, he'll be quiet. Hello, girlie. Yeah, so my pick and mix, it's just a mixture of what I normally do. Just a mixture of a few things. My first thing is I would like to thank Steve Donoghue. I'll put a link to his channel below, who gave me a bit of a shout out after my Sci-Fi Masterworks series and did his own. and didn't think that David Gerald belonged there, but hey, which I found quite funny. But yeah, so Steve Donoghue, if you don't know, he's a book reviewer and he's been on YouTube for a long time. He's been on BookTube and he basically just sits with his little schnauzer and talks books. And I really enjoy his channel because it's nice and varied. It'll speak about anything. And obviously, as we all know, that the real star on Steve's channel is definitely the Bean. Definitely his little miniature schnauzer is definitely the star on it. That's why everybody goes there. But yeah, thank you again for Steve Donoghue. And I know quite a few of his people who subscribe to him popped across because suddenly my subscriber count went up. And that was the second thing, is my subscriber count is now very near 100, as my wife pointed out. And as much as I'm thinking, oh, only I'm just amazed 100 people subscribe to me. And my wife thinks I should do something a little different for, a little video once I reach 100. There's about 5 or 6 subscribers to go, so it could take years to get the other 5 or 6. But when I do, I'm going to do a video, but I don't know what on. My wife thinks I should do 100 books that I would recommend. The other thought I had was, my 100 favourite books, but I'm not a big fan of lists like this, so I'm not really sure what I'm doing. But yeah, I need to do something for it, but I'm not sure. If you've got any ideas, you can always pop them down below. And yeah, I've got a few up in the air ideas. And also, if you haven't, pay Steve that's a Labrador tail hitting the back of my chair. If you haven't, above this banging, pay Steve's channel a visit. He's always got lots of interesting stuff on there that he talks about. He gets lots of books that you've never heard of and talks about them. So anyway, my reading this week has been, I've not read huge amounts. I may have mentioned before, I'm the full-time carer for my wife, who's she's ill and has a disability. So sometimes on bad weeks, I don't get to read or do as much as I'd like. And also I've just basically struggled. Last week, as I said, I restarted do a reread of Heine's Glory Road. I'm about halfway through it at the moment, which on a normal week I would have finished quite easily after a couple of days, but I've instead of been reading quite slowly. I've not started my Hal Clement books for Hal for the Holidays yet, so I'm hoping to get onto those this week. The other thing is, if you saw last week, is I managed to get hold of this book because it had the story Rollerball Murder in there by William Harrison, which I've started reading the book, and I read the Rollerball Murder story, which is excellent. And if you know the original 1975 film, forget the modern film, it's, not worth it. The story that it's based on, the short story, is more violent and more brutal. But what's interesting is William Harrison, who wrote the short story, this was his only science fiction story. And the collection this is originally from is his own, is all the other stories are not science fiction. And I would actually quite like to get hold of that collection, but I had a look around and it is a lot of money. It's silly money for me, because the other stories do sound interesting from what I was reading around it. But the Rollerball Murder story was, as I said, he adapted it to the film, and the focus on the film is quite different to the focus of the actual short story. Which is, so I will make a short video on that, just discussing that at some point, I think. because it's interesting how he changed focus. The same writer, or maybe the director, Richard Fleischer, I think, had a bit of influence on it. But the way the focus is slightly shifted is quite interesting. And as I said, the short story Rollerball Murder is more brutal. It really is. But I'm looking forward to getting through the rest of the short stories. I want to finish off the Glory Road, because it's a nice easy read for me anyway. The other thing I've been reading this week, let's just look over, is Yanda Binder, Adam Link Robot. This was actually called iRobot. It was actually published about, I mentioned this last week, 10 years before Isaac Asimov's iRobot. And what happened was Asimov's publisher basically stole the title, which is, but it's interesting. It's like an early robot story. And I said there's 2 episodes of the Outer Limits TV series based on it. One from the original TV series, which was in the late 50s, and the other from the modern 1990s one. And I haven't watched them yet, but I'm going to. But these stories are, I don't like to say things badly written, but they're very, it reads almost like a children's book. The way the plotting's done, the prose is very workmanlike. I think it would be more, I wouldn't recommend it to read for people unless you're really interested in like the history of science fiction, the history of robots in science fiction. And I said I will be doing a video on that actually at some point, I think. So yeah, so that's basically been my reading for the past week. I said I've got the 100 subscriber thing coming up. I've got a video coming out on Monday, which is about the book On the Edge of Forever, which was Christopher Priest discussing what went wrong with Harlan Ellison's Last Dangerous Visions book. So I've got that coming out on Monday. I finished it yesterday. It took me longer than I thought. And I normally, my whole point of this channel is I don't want much editing, because that's not what I want to get involved in. I don't want dropping the odd thing in. But actually that one involved a lot more editing. I will actually quickly whack the picture up here of the editing timeline. It's far more than I normally have. It took me far longer than I should do. And I decided that rather than release it this weekend, I'd release it as my Monday video, just to give myself a bit more room. The other thing I've got is, I've got this week's Times Literary Supplement, and I've got some comics that have arrived. The Times Literary Supplement, it's been running a bit late for the past few weeks because we've had some mail strikes. I had last week's one arrived this Wednesday, and I had this week's one arrive this Friday. So this week's one I've had a quick flip through. I'll go for it in a second. But don't normally open things on thing, but I've got Forbidden Planet parcel arrived. Let's see what's in it. Because there will be comics. I don't know what comics in here, what they were sending me. I have just a Star Wars episode 29 and number 13 of this run of Venom. Right. So I will put those with the other ones. I'm not reading those ones at the moment. I'm reading some Blade Runner ones at the moment. But yeah, what you might want to see those. This, I said, this pick and mix videos. It's always going to be quite random. Oh, okay, I'm not going to put that back in the comic bag. So yeah, this week's Times Literary Supplement. We have, I just put a couple of things in there. I've not fully read it yet because I said it only arrived yesterday. There was quite interesting things. Got Vladimir Zelensky from the Ukraine on the front of it. And so I've put a couple of tabs in here, the bits that leapt out to me. The letters page, quite interesting because there's a couple of back and forth. I always find letters page quite interesting because when you get some academics fighting, it's always quite entertaining. But this one here is about Alan Rickman, because I had a review of Alan Rickman's diaries, which, if you didn't know, came out. Great actor Alan Rickman. And what was interesting, brought me up about this letter, was editors for diaries and things. And this guy had, I'm going to read this. In my review of Alan Rickman's diaries, I raised a few questions about Alan Taylor's editorial choices for his letter. And his letter on November the 4th has reinforced my doubts. I did read the letter, actually. In removing more than 750,000 words from the original diaries, Taylor has made a major intervention. 750,000 words he take. Obviously, Alan Rickman's diaries covered his life, so we're doing a lot. And the thing is, and there's not been, as I said, I lamented about the lack of any statement about how he went about this task. His response is not self-evident, isn't it what editors do? I also wondered what had been left out. Nothing that needed to be highlighted, he says, adding that his priority was preserving Alan's imitable voice. But of course, the whole million-word diary is now Alan's imitable voice. What decisions did Alan take to make on behalf of his readers and Rickman? Usually an editor will take out a line or two, at least to explain the nature of the large-scale omissions, even though they were one less to editorial principle, a method, than intellectual choice. And I just thought that was quite interesting because it sort of brings up the, how much do you edit somebody's diaries when you're republishing them. I thought that was quite interesting. And also there was a response to, also recently I had a great review of Terry Pratchett's biography, and Christopher Priest reviewed it. Christopher Priest seems to be everywhere this week. And there's an interesting thing about it. This is by Paul Kincaid, who's a writer and a critic, especially on science fiction and fantasy. And yeah, on another occasion, I was taking part in a panel discussion, and Terry, obviously Terry Pratchett, was supposed to be one of the fellow panelists. He didn't turn up until halfway through the scheduled hour. Afterwards, he explained that once he showed up at such events, every comment and question from the audience was about him or directed at him. By turning up late, he at least allowed the other panelists the opportunity to make their own points. I just found that quite interesting, about Terry Pratchett. And what else is in here that is a thing that Steve Donoghue might like. I know he gets a TLS as well. This is memoirs from lots of critics. One of them's Jonathan Bate, mad about Shakespeare. Fierce appetites, loving and living to excess in my present and in my writings. Elizabeth Boyle. Love of the novel by Christina Lupton, and that's some critics writing about their life and their loves and things. So that just made me think of Steve Donoghue. And yeah, watching a man read newspapers is what it is. And this one picked up. It's called Fratterland. This is about Bourneville by Jonathan Coe, and it's a novel. What it describes a three-generation saga of Britain and the EU through the medium of chocolate. For those outside the UK, if you don't know, Bourneville is where the original Cadbury's chocolate factory is, and Bourneville was a village built by the Quakers. And Bourneville Village, it's a beautiful place. I've been there. I once actually played rugby there many years ago, and I remember it was the most painful 80 minutes of my life because it was such a tough game, and I spent a lot of time in the middle of a bloody scrum, and then as soon as we came out, we'd go back to another one. It was hell and muddy and wet, but yeah, that was many years ago when I used to live down in England. But yeah, and it just sounded quite interesting. Maybe it's just my history with Bourneville, but it's basically following the families from about 1945 onwards, around the Cadbury's factory and around Bourneville. So I haven't actually read that yet. I said this is just bits I've picked out, and I'll probably read that in the next few days. And I think there was one more thing that made me obviously interested. Ah yes, another one for Steve Donoghue. Once Upon a Tome in Misadventures of a Rare Bookseller, Oliver Darkshire. It's basically about somebody who deals in rare books and their life, and I just thought that was quite interesting. Yeah, that's enough of the complimentary supplement. So have I covered everything I was going to cover? Yeah, so we've got the what I've been reading, and I think that's about it. I said I'm hoping to get through Glory Road probably today. I'll probably finish it about halfway through it, and I'll probably could finish it today if I sit down and put my mind to it. To be good. And I said I'm going to slowly wade through the year's best science fiction number 7, which is from 1972. Whether it was that year really was their best science fiction, I don't know, but Rollerball Murder is an excellent story. And then hopefully once I finish those, I'm going to start on the Hal Clement finally. As you know, probably know that I don't normally do TBRs, but I wanted to do the Hal Clement for Hal for the Holidays. So I've got 3 or 4 books I think to do, which I will be reading. And I think that's about it. And if anybody's got to the end of the video, I think you should leave a comment in there. Just to prove that you did. Let me think of a phrase or a word. Could you mention a golden retriever? Sadly we lost our golden retriever, Harley, in March. He was nearly 16 years old, so a very good age, but it's very, very sad. And yeah, if you put the word golden retriever in, I know you've actually got this far in the video. If not, at the end of the video, I've been talking to myself. Anyway, I will speak to you all again soon. And I said Monday, keep an eye out for the video I'm going to be plopping out. Plopping out? Is that a phrase? Yeah, I'm going to be putting out. Okay, thank you all very much. And I'll see you soon and have a good weekend.